Hello, good morning, evening, afternoon, night, middle of the day, any time of the day, dawn, dusk, crepuscular creatures. This is the Arena Craft Podcast, a show dedicated exclusively to Magic the Gathering Arena. My name is Arjuna, one of your hosts. The other co-host, CovertGoBlue, hanging out in cold Michigan, braving the dangerous roads, the blizzards, the storms, the blizzard brawls. Would you say you've just been through a blizzard brawl?
I've been through a blizzard brawl, but it's okay because I'm here to say hello to the southern hemisphere, the northern hemisphere, the east, the west, the southeast to the west, all the other places. And of course, my homies hanging out in the snow in northern USA.
It's a funny time. As I look out my window, I'm up here in Oregon. It's like 60 degrees, blue sky day.
I'm going to California in a week. So
nice.
Then I'll just be laughing at everybody. I'm just gonna be sitting in Southern California, just laughing at everyone. But right now I'm just miserable.
just imagining better times. Well, there's pros and there's cons, right? And that I think is perfectly going to describe what we're going to talk about today, which is the meta game. The standard meta game to be specific, CovertGoBlue and I have both been playing a lot of Magic with varying degrees of success. And today we're going to be pretty much just focusing on all there is to know and all there is to see. We're going to be referencing untapped.gg a lot. They are actually a sponsor of the podcast, so we highly recommend them. Their deck tracker, game tracker, collection tracker, all kinds of things tracker. And you can find a download link in the show notes. It does help us out. It's free to you. So go ahead and check them out. Yeah, exactly.
It's down here. It's in this direction.
Down in the show notes.
If you're watching on YouTube, it's down there.
So one of the sweet things about them is that they collect an incredible amount of information, and we're going to talk about that today, in addition to our own experiences. So CGB, before we jump into that, is there anything hot and spicy you'd like to say about the world of Magic, or any reflections before we dive in?
Oh, I've got hot and spicy for days, but we can mostly let the numbers do the talking because I just want to say it's always one of the best shows about a week of experience with the new cards. Things start to settle into what's good, and we have a lot to say about them. We get some sweet but I won anyway stories to tell, I'm sure. It's always one of the best shows, so buckle up.
I'm stoked. I always look forward to these myself. Actually, before we do start looking at the numbers, I think it would be fun for us to just talk about what we've been playing.
Okay.
And some of our observations.
I like this.
Now, I know that, this is probably one of the hardest working times in your year, right, CGB? It's like every time a standard set releases, you're probably just jamming and building all kinds of decks and stuff. So I'd be interested to hear, what have you been playing? How have you been feeling about it?
I've been playing, I've played so many things. It's hard to describe where to start because I do try to play something different every day. And when I'm streaming, it seems like I'm playing something different almost every hour. So it's challenging to be like, this is what I've been playing lately. But standard, for one thing, I haven't touched Alchemy, Historic Brawl, Historic since the set since Neon Dynasty came out. Haven't touched those things. I've focused on standard to try to get a handle on a format again. It's honestly bizarre. Like Alchemy and standard are different enough that they're different formats, right? So there are things that I do wrong because I played too much Alchemy at first. In Alchemy, you can't really mess around. It's very snowbally and stuff. And you just have to if you can Doomscar 2 creatures, just Doomscar 2 creatures, because there's probably a lot that's going to go wrong over the next few turns, and you have to be alive at the end of it. And standard can be a little grindier, which is interesting. You can lead people into sweepers. You can stall for time. But I will tell you what's tilting. It tilts me every time. Every time. And I think you know what I'm going to say. Playing against a card that's nerfed in Alchemy and standard. It's like, oh my God, it kills me. The only exception.
Goldspan Dragon.
Oh yeah, Goldspan Dragon.
Oh, it's a nightmare, dude.
It's a nightmare. It's so tilting. It's like, man, imagine a world where this card was a little more balanced. Wouldn't that be nice? No, we can't have nice things.
Oh my gosh.
People revolt against nice things. But Luminarch Aspirant's the only one where it's like, that doesn't bother me. Like that card, that card just should work that way, and it's a good threat, and it doesn't bother me. But every time like a Goldspan Dragon comes down and they tap out, and I'm like, I have a removal spell. They make a treasure. They counter my removal spell. I have another removal spell. They make a treasure. They counter that removal spell. I don't want to play Magic anymore. Oh Holebreaker Horror can't be countered because that was a great idea.
That's a fun thing. Hasn't come up much for me, but I'm sure you as an eminent control mage have been banging your head against that wall. Yep. Yep. No, I mean, I'm with you. I mean, now it's funny actually, because I have been back to my old like Chariot Ren shenanigans, right? So I've also been benefiting and remembering just how good the Cat Chariot ever was. And Crafties, that's a very good Magic
Dude,
card.
I think Chariot's actually in line. You know, I'm playing like with Unscuffed Chariot. I'm like, this is good. It can still get beaten. I've played a lot of Chariots on turn 3 and lost, you know?
It's true.
Like it's totally a beatable phenomenon. Holebreaker Horror and Goldspan are the ones where it's like, I'm a blue mage, man, but I'm off the Izzet thing. If I never saw an Izzet deck, if they didn't print a good Izzet card for the next decade, I would be fine with that.
Totally. Dude, you know what else I've been realizing? Like, I'm looking at all of these lists that I've built, like Simic, Sultai, blah, this, blah, that, right? And I'm looking in the 3-drop slot. So the card that I just never realized it, I didn't really think about it before, but the card that's been in the 3-drop slot of all my blue decks is freaking Divide by Zero, right? And so I'm like trying to build decks now, and I'm just like, wait, like what are 3-drops in this format? I don't even know. Right. I'm like putting together these Simic decks and stuff. And I'm like, there are just no good 3-drops in Simic, basically, period. So that has really changed things for me as well. I think I didn't realize how little I had played Standard before this set release. Right. Because even when they like made the bans and stuff, I was still kind of in alchemy mode. I was still kind of checked out to some degree.
Me too. I don't think I touched Standard for a really long time there. And now I'm back in it. Have you found that Planeswalkers are like really good without Divide by Zero?
Dude, there are a lot of things that are surprisingly good without Divide by Zero. Like, damn, that was a card. I mean, it really was a card. And it's funny because when it got banned, we were all like, what? That little card? You know, like, but no, I mean, it really makes sense. Like, it's a very, very different format without it. So, that's been an adjustment period for me as well.
Okay. Nice. Yeah. I feel like, how about you? I mean, you kind of described some of your piles. Do you have anything special you want to bring up that you've been jamming before we dive in?
I've figured out a lot of what you're not supposed to be doing in the format.
Oh, I like this.
That's pretty fun.
Oh, put it in the thumbnail. What you're not supposed to be doing. Let's give it to me.
So for starters, I don't know that Simic got any better with this particular set release.
Tamiyo doesn't do it?
Okay, so here's the thing, all right? I've had so many people sending me these lists, and they're like, Arjuna, our Simic Lord, check out this list, right? And it's basically it's like 57 or 58 random cards, and then Tamiyo, right? And
my masterpiece!
I'm like, Cool, dude. Like, what are we doing with this? Like, what are we actually doing with our Lord and Savior Tamiyo? So I'm not crapping on the card. I've seen, like noted other Simic mage Ali Eldrazi been putting together some super grindy looking Tamiyo lists, and I definitely think the card is capable of doing stuff. But it's just like, okay, like I could play Tamiyo or I could play Ren in 7. And I just feel like, why am I making space for Tamiyo in my deck if I'm playing Ren?
Arjuna,
that's how
Arjuna, why not both? Just do it. Just buy in,
those
baby.
Toes, right? So
because Tamiyo's a 4-drop.
Ish, right? I mean, she's a pretty weak planeswalker on 4. Here's what I've been messing with. There's a list I was actually playing today on stream. It was doing pretty well, and it was Storm the Festival list, because what do you know? That's a Magic card that I like playing now. And it's basically just like a bunch of sagas and Cat Chariot and Ramp and Tameo and Ren and Seven, and what do you know? It's pretty good. So I think the Tameo gets a lot better when you can get her like for free plus something else off of a Storm the Festival. And I especially think that the Tameo Cat Chariot combo that's just butter, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just like your classic, like you play the Chariot on 4, you swing with it on 5, your opponent blocks it, you slam Tameo, you get it back the same turn. Like you're feeling very, very, very good about that. Or even if your opponent, kills it with a removal spell or something. So, it doesn't play very well against Vanishing Verse, but that's just the fun of this particular format, I guess.
Verse? Tameo doesn't? Tameo can't be hit, right?
No, yeah, but like the Verse hits your Chariot, and then you're kind of, left with your genitals in your hand there. So, it's kind of I don't know. I don't really know where Tameo fits into this format quite yet. I think it's a fine Planeswalker. I haven't really seen anything that like was jaw-dropping to me. One cool thing that you can do with Tameo is if you get something back from the yard, it's a token, right?
Yep.
You create a token copy of it, and then you can copy it with the Cat Chariot. So that can lead to, like, if you're getting back like 5 mana sagas and then copying them with Cat Chariot, I mean, that's pretty cash money. So
this is gonna sound memey. This is memey, but like I've been playing a lot of what I call Chariot Pile, and it's like Storm the Festival, Ren, Chariot, and then you pick like a third color and you build. And you play some ramp. And so whenever I'm in blue, I'm running Tameo, and I'm not kidding. I actually don't think it's the worst thing you can do with the spot. It's probably not the best, but I've been running like 1 mirror box. I'm trying to get you to spit. I'm trying to get you to spit your water out, but you're actually into it.
And I tried that one out too. It never went anywhere for me, but I actually had that same thought.
Okay.
I was like,
in Mythic,
what if we can hit multiple Chariots and multiple Ren and Sevens?
In Mythic, in the top 200, I played a game where I made the Tameo's notebook and then copied it 7 times.
Oh, 7 times? Holy crap, dude. Yeah, that must have been some fun shenanigans.
Oh my God. Yeah, I think I had 4 Chariots on the battlefield. I had a couple Tameos going. I had like 14 of the frickin' tree. And you're like, how is the opponent still alive? Dude, this format is grindy. It goes wide. Like people can produce chump blockers for a million years with Lulth and Wedding Announcement and God,
my God,
right?
Dude, those Orzhov decks or even those mono black decks. I was just having a game today where like I had the world's most terrifying board state. And I was like, if my opponent has like 1 blood on the snow, none of this matters. Mm-hmm. Like it's just a joke, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
And then there's also the cleric class Voice of Resurgence games I've gotten into where I have to keep chump blocking a giant voice with my freaking Ren tokens. So I have to keep making more of them. And it like stuff like that just gets crazy. But I mean, wide boards are on the menu now because games don't end on a specific turn where the opponent copies Alrund's Epiphany. So I found a few ways to break the wide boards, which has been very interesting for the Chariot piles because it's easy to make a ton of good stuff, but sometimes you're just staring at another ton of good stuff. Have you played with Glorious Sunrise in your piles at all?
No.
Okay.
No, remind me what that does.
It's a 5-mana enchantment, green, 3. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you choose one of 4 options. You either give a land the ability to tap for triple green until end of turn. You draw a card if you control a creature of power 3 or greater. You gain 3 life, or all creatures gain +1/+1 and trample.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a nice finisher in a Storm deck for sure.
Oh, yeah. Suddenly they just can't block your Ren tokens and you smash and it's game. Yeah. So it's like an overrun in permanent form. So you hit it with Storm or you bring it back with Tameo. I've copied it with Tameo.
That's actually really sweet. I had seen that enchantment floating around. I'd actually considered running it in Brawl, but I hadn't really internalized all the things that it did, and I kind of wrote it off as a meme. But I agree. That sounds like a really good, like a one-of to hit off your storm for sure. I have, my game plan has been so go over the top that I've tended to end up in positions where, like, if I'm doing my thing, my opponent's just not able to deal with it anyway, right? So that's been kind of my approach, is to just try to go so big and so grindy that even if they wrath my board, and even if they make big creatures, and even if whatever, I'm still just like going bigger than them, and I'm still just laughing at it and smashing them in the face. It's been going okay, but I do like that, that kind of next level thinking of like, well, how do I just end the game? It also actually makes me wonder if the quad green enchantment,
Unnatural growth.
Yeah, I want like that could be a fun one.
I mean, it'll be fun, but size was rarely my problem. It was hitting. It was slapping face.
Doesn't provide trample, does it? Yeah. Another card I was just thinking about today was Master Symmetrist. I don't know if that's too memey.
I don't know what this does.
Yeah, it's an uncommon. It's a 4/4 with reach, and it gives all of your creatures with the same power and toughness trample. So,
okay. Yeah, I mean, kind of.
I mean, being a creature, it's kind of vulnerable, but it can also block, which an enchantment can't.
Maybe one of those and one sunrise, and now you're trampling.
I was thinking about it.
Okay.
It's something to diversify the suite, and people might not see it coming.
It's the gold rank technology. You're getting the gold is creeping in.
There you go, baby. There you go. Thinking outside the box. So anyway, these are the kind of problems I've been trying to solve. I tested out a deck which is all based on like continually recurring stuff from the graveyard, and it's playing this card. What's the card? It's like a green legendary creature that you can channel to get stuff back from the graveyard with.
Oh, I played it today. Sakashima,
something like that, right?
The names, I am good at card names. I can't in this set, man.
Dude, this set is too much, man. This set is too much. So anyway, but that card, it's like a 1 and a green. It's a green legend, and it does a slow rampy thing, but you can also get stuff back from the graveyard with it. So I was playing with a deck that runs that. Actually runs the Master of Winds. And I've got looking
it.
At this.
It's a Shigeki, the Jukai Visionary.
Shigeki.
Yep.
There you go.
1 in a green, legendary enchantment creature, 1/3. 1 in a green, tap, return it to your hand, reveal the top 4 cards of your library. You may put a land card from among them onto the battlefield tab, put the rest in your graveyard. Channel XX green, discard Shigeki, return X target non-legendary cards from your graveyard to your hand. I played this today. I found some things, but you might have found them first, so do your thing.
Well, no, I wasn't testing with this. I just saw this deck list posted by Saffron Olive called Turtle Prison, and that's about as on brand as it gets for me, right? So it's a Simic list. I checked it out, and it's basically like it's got Shigeki in it. It's got 4 Colossal Sky Turtles. It's a Cyclone Summoner list, so it's got, that whole bounce everything thing going on. It also plays 4 copies of Blossom Prancer, which is like an uncommon, which a number of people have been trying to make work in Standard. It's a 4/4 reach, and when it ETBs, you look at the top 5 of your library, you can reveal a creature or enchantment and put it into your hand. You put the rest on the bottom in a random order, and if you don't do that, you gain 4 life. So anyway, dude, I'm not saying it's good, man. I'm just saying that we tried it out, and the deck was just so embarrassingly bad. I got my hopes up. I was like, oh man, like maybe this is our next janky Simic pile. It's going to be surprisingly good. It was not good, Crafties.
Okay, but at least in the process, did you find combining Shigeki with Colossal Sky Turtle?
So here's the funny thing. I saw that was kind of the idea, right? Because basically you're just like continually getting stuff back from your graveyard, right? Which is what you can do.
Shigeki can channel to get multiple cards back. And then if one of them's a Sky Turtle, you can channel it to get back Shigeki. So every cycle through, you're picking up more and more cards. Like you're basically drawing 3 cards back from your graveyard, then trading one of them back for the card that drew you 3 every time. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, one of the problems was I just wasn't drawing Shigeki. So
Dude.
The deck's pretty bad when you don't see that card.
Why are you so bad at Magic?
Oh my God, dude. I mean, that's what I'm saying, man. I feel like whenever when I play decks that I build, it tends to go okay. But as soon as I play someone else's deck, I'm like, I'm never drawing the key permanent. I'm never doing this. It never works out for me. So whatever. I don't know. I probably do just suck at Magic. But I was actually Chris Botello was chatting with me on Twitter about it and was saying that he'd actually seen a Sultai version of the deck in High Mythic that was doing some pretty scary stuff, especially doing stuff like bringing back Go Blank and just locking your opponent out of the game that way.
I got invoked Despair, the discard draw one the one that makes you sack a creature, enchantment, and planeswalker or lose 2 life, draw a card. I had somebody doing that to me with Shigeki.
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's a card to keep an eye on. I think that the Shigeki Turtle combo could theoretically fit into a lot of different decks that might actually be cool.
Mine's...
And I do...
Sorry.
Say again?
Go ahead and finish. Yeah, finish the thought.
I was just going to say, that 2 cards that share a color, and you could basically build whatever kind of deck you wanted to around that. But it could end up being like a combo that just provides like an unstoppable late game for decks that are able to hang on for a long time, and for decks that are able to just, keep putting mana down and whatever. And the fact that both of those cards can't be countered except by stifle effects when they're doing their thing is like really powerful. So basically the only 2 ways you can interact with that combo are by controlling your opponent's graveyard or by stifling, which we don't really have much of going on in Standard.
So the version that I played, where I found the combo, is I was trying to build a Brilliant Restoration deck. And I found that combo completely by accident, because the idea was I'm going to use Shigeki to fill my graveyard with a bunch of sagas, and I'm going to cast Brilliant Restoration and get them all back. And I was like, Colossal Sky Turtle, enchantment turtle, that's great. It has the crab in there too.
Thing to get back.
Yeah. So it was just like, I have these expensive cards that I can channel for effects, and then they just come back as giant monsters when I cast Brilliant Restoration, help end the game. I had 4 copies of the 5-color saga, the Kami War, which is really exciting, as well as Binding the Old Gods, Battle of Frost and Fire. It's 5-color World Tree nonsense. What I found is I could do the turtle Shigeki thing with like a board wipe and anything else, like say a Kami War. The black-white token decks, they are not ready for that. They have no recourse. If you get to like 8 mana, which, just keep them from killing you fast. I have like 10 sweepers in that deck, like Doom Scars and Battle of Frost and Fires and all this stuff. If you get to enough mana and just start every turn, Sky Turtle, bring back Shigeki, get back like 2 or 3 important cards and just spam them like that, the black-white decks have nothing. You can grind them out to dust pretty easily. And I was actually surprised by how dominant I was beating like the mid-range to control decks that didn't have blue. And then my favorite thing that happened is I ran up against somebody who copied Atasha's Hideous Laughter on me 3 times. They exiled about 22 cards.
They just hit like 2 turtles and some other nonsense.
They hit the turtles and the crabs, and they hit the sagas, and it was like, nice try, And then I couldn't even kill him the next turn. It took me like 4 more turns to kill him with a crab, just attacking for 5. And they're just sitting there like draw, go, can't do anything.
Oh my God, justice is served. Yeah, you can wake up on the wrong side of bed playing that particular deck for sure. So anyway, I think that there's something there. I think it's something to keep an eye on. And I agree, like if the shell that you build around it is compelling, then I think it could definitely go places. And, blue-green, that kind of good ramp colors and whatever. So they help fix your mana and stuff. So that could end up being like a real thing.
Yeah, more potential than I would have ever expected when I looked at the deck list.
Yeah, totally. So anyway, that's the kind of stuff that I've been messing around with. I tried a little like kind of the Wanderer, Restoration of Iganja, like playing some blue, all that kind of stuff. I'm just not as good at building those decks and not as good at that style of gameplay. So, I had some fun, I had some success, I made some mistakes, but I don't really feel like I have a lot to bring to the table as far as like wisdom concerning those lists. But I know that you've been, doing an incredible amount of messing around with that stuff.
Yeah.
And so I have two questions for you.
Okay.
Like, A of all, is that whole kind of like mid-rangey, like the Wanderer Restoration, Professor of Symbology kind of game plan? Like, is that really good? And the second question I wanted to ask was how's the whole Azorius thing doing? Like, is like Azorius mid-range or control kind of a thing?
Okay. So the Wanderer, I really enjoy playing the card. I've done a lot of damage with the card. I've done a lot of cool things with the card. It's definitely a better card with a battlefield on both sides. It's not nearly as good on like when your board is empty. So you need some tokens, some bodies, something, because like everybody's like, oh, I'll just play the Wanderer in combat minus kill like one of your things. And then when I untap, I guess I'll just make a samurai, and I paid 4 mana to exile one thing, gain 2 life, and make 1 samurai. And that's not terrible. That's okay. What's really good is you have a creature, they have a creature, they attack with their creatures because their creatures are a little better than yours, or they're happy to trade with your creature. You flash the Wanderer in, you plus it. Your first striker trades with, like, doesn't trade, but kills one of their creatures. And then you untap and then you minus the Wanderer and kill the other one. Or then you make a samurai if the other one isn't worth killing. Like, that's where you just straight up, like, took 2 creatures off their board with 1 card and 4 mana. And you have a planeswalker left over. That's good. That's how you want it. So, I mean, I've played 4 Wanderer in a number of black-white decks, in a number of mono-white decks. And it's done good. I'm not sure that 4 is what you want. 2 might be the sweet spot where it's not always good, but sometimes just the threat that you might have it is better than the card itself, to just get the opponent to play a little awkwardly. And I'm not. It didn't change the game for me, but it's a card that does, like, you want it in your opponent's head a bit. And then on the blue-white side, I'm playing a lot of like Wanderer, Holebreaker Horror piles. The Wanderer has flash, usually just jamming 4 of it because I want it to be good. But I've cut like all the little creatures. And I think I had Wedding Announcement that I was trying with the Wanderer in the blue-white versions, and that was not it. You need so many spells. Like right now, my version is Wanderer with the only creatures that it can kind of plus onto is I have 4 Sunset Revelry that I try to play before I cast it. But I think blue-white is meant to be like full-blown control, full-blown Holebreaker Horror, everything at instant speed, so that come turn 8, 9, 10, you Holebreaker Horror and you take over the game that way. And Wanderer is just a bridge to that spot,
Mm-hmm. And how is that going? Like, is that feeling viable?
So I've only made a few videos with it because I hop around a lot, but I've won a lot. I've won most of my games each time, and I've won a couple of the standard events. And the thing is, it's me playing blue-white. So I just know exactly what I'm trying to do all the time. It's the muscle memory is right there. So it's hard for me to gauge when other people are playing new decks against me. And especially when they're playing decks like black-white tokens that I'm pretty well set up to beat, that I've been thinking about how I'm going to beat. And I play to my plans pretty quickly. Like, those matchups aren't hard for me to win. So it's hard to say if the blue-white deck is actually good or if I'm playing like a scuffed Izzet deck or a scuffed Jeskai deck. You know what I mean? For me, it works. I wouldn't be surprised if other control players would pick it up, play it, and say, I'd rather have Goldspan Dragon in my deck. What the hell am I doing here? And they'd be right.
Well, so let's start talking about that because, one of the big new, or I guess not fully new, but like sensations of this format is Hinata, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that if you're playing like a control plan, you kind of owe it to yourself to ask yourself like whether it's going to be better or worse than playing some kind of Hinata deck, because they do just do so many powerful things. I've definitely played, I've played against the Hinata deck and gotten owned by it. I have found it to be a similar plan to the old Izzet plans where like the longer the game goes, the less likely you are to win. I have found it like to be like when I have beatdown plans, especially like if I have like a turn 3 chariot on the play that my opponent wasn't expecting or something like that, I can find the deck to struggle. But overall, I've been really impressed with these Hinata decks. And yeah, I mean, I guess there's not that much more that I have to say about them. Like the builds to me seem fairly obvious. It's mostly an Izzet shell. Sometimes I'll see people playing the what a Valorous stance.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's a card that I see a lot because it protects your Hinata for 1 mana, which is kind of dope. So I'll see the stance, but and then of course like the Magma Opus, right? Because that's the big top end, and then most of the rest of the list looks pretty recognizable as just like an Izzet control shell.
It appears like the evolution of Izzet Dragons, where they used to play like Galzeth Prismari for 4 mana, and it gave them a treasure, and most of the time it would die or get countered, but that's fine. It made way for the Goldspan Dragon, and now Hinata does that job really well. If you want to interact with it, you have to pay more, so it eats up more of your turn to kill it. You have to leave more mana open if you want to kill it on end step, and if you happen to untap with Hinata and you have a Magma Opus, it's kind of like the game just ends. I mean, it feels that way, but I think that the best versions of that deck, like, every time I've tried too hard to make Hinata good, I feel like my deck is just bad. So it feels like all you really need is splash white, run some Valor Stance, which a lot of decks were doing before Neon Dynasty came out. It was a thing that came up in some tournaments. A Japanese team did really well with the Valor Stance in their Izzet Dragons list.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so Hinata is just kind of an extension of that, where you're running Valor Stance, so now you have a removal spell that hits things no matter how big they get, like Ren tokens and stuff like that. And you just have Magma Opus in your deck, which was always a good card that could just be a ramp card if you needed it to, or be an end game that you're looking for. And then when you have Hinata Opus, it's like you're playing a totally different broken game.
Yep. I mean, I feel like I'm playing Historic, basically, when that comes up, because it's kind of that power level of combo. And yeah, I mean, you know what's funny is that the most time I've spent playing Hinata has actually been in Brawl. It was the first Brawl deck that I built, like just messing around with this set. And the thing that I discovered that for me was the scariest playing Hinata was that 2 mana counter spells become 1 mana counter spells when you have Hinata in play, right?
Yeah.
And like, you don't tend to think about counter spells as being targeted spells, but they do say counter target spell on a majority of them. And so like that just starts to become pretty terrifying. And I've actually been finding, like, I think Negate is a totally feasible card to play in this format. I can't think of a single deck in the format outside of maybe like Mono Green where Negate feels like a truly bad card.
Oh, Negate's great against them. They've got Chariot Ranger class. Now they have Invoke the Ancients. It's mono white. There's almost nothing in mono white.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Mono white is a bad one for sure. So like, yeah, I just think like, I think Negate's really good. I also think like if you play best of 3, Disdainful Stroke out of the sideboard's also really good. You can counter your opponent's Hinata. You can counter your opponent's Magma Opus. You can counter your opponent's Tameo or whatever they're doing, right? So I think that that's kind of one of the underrated aspects of Hinata. And if I was building a Hinata deck, I would probably be trying to include some more counter spells in my list just because of that.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Maybe that's right. Maybe it's not.
I love synergy like March of Swirling Mist to like phase out your Hinata and their whole board, but then you find out you can't sweep their board if you phase it out. Kind of awkward. So yeah, it's like just run Negate instead. Just run Saw It Coming instead, and seems to do just fine.
Yeah. So, you know, I mean, that's just like a logical step forward for a lot of people. You know, Chris Patello was on that on, you know, minute 1 of the format. Noted Izzet Mage. So anyway, yeah, I mean, you raise a good point. Like it's the jury's out as to what the best control deck in the format is, but it definitely seems like it might be that.
Yeah, it's very powerful and very obnoxious, and I feel like I've seen it all before, except for Hinata makes Magma Opus more likely to really annoy you. Yeah.
Yeah, there's just all these edge cases that come up as well. Like you're trying to do something and you're like, wait, why is this so hard? Or why can't I pay for this or whatever? And then you realize that you're doing something that targets, or you're doing something that has multiple targets and you never thought about it before. And all of a sudden your game plan's just wrecked. So I would definitely, whenever that card's on the battlefield, just like read your cards. You know, you've played these cards forever. Read them again, man. Just make sure that you know what your cards do so that you don't get totally trounced. Final thing to note, when you and your opponent have a Hinata in play, spells just behave normally. They just do exactly what they say on the card. I also ran into that where I was like, why can't I do the thing? Oh, because my opponent's taxing me, right? So anyway, so there is that. Let's talk about, like, I feel like this is kind of the elephant in the room in this format, and that is Orzhov tokens.
Mm-hmm.
Like, let's talk about that deck. I mean, I feel like that deck was gathering steam even before this set release, and it seems to have only gotten better.
Dude, it's 2022 blood money, baby. It just keeps getting better, man. Keeps getting better.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, the impression I've got is that a lot of these lists have actually moved away from Blood on the Snow and stuff. And, you know, they're kind of playing like a little bit more of a mid-rangey plan without as much like raw go over the top power, but more just kind of like, I'm going to do better things in the mid game and control the board.
There's two different Orzhov decks on untapped.gg. If you look under like the win rate today, popularity today tiers on the meta overview, one is Orzhov tokens and the other is Orzhov control. Orzhov tokens has a 56% win rate. Orzhov control has a 55.7% win rate. Orzhov control is 5.9% of the meta. Orzhov tokens is 5.8. So if you put them together, it's like, you know, you got about 12% meta and you've got an above 55% win rate, which is very, you know, good in standard. And the big difference seems to be that control runs Blood in the Snow. That seems to be the only difference I can find in the way that they broke down those lists.
Yep. Do you have a sense for which one's better?
I mean, come on. There's a 0.6% differential between Orzhov tokens and Orzhov control.
We have
Obviously, it's Orzhov tokens, but for some reason, 0.1% of the players are still prefer Orzhov control to Orzhov tokens. 0.1% value to be gained there. I'm being silly. I'm playing the tokens deck way more. I just don't find room for Blood in the Snow, nor do I find it necessary. It seems to be slow and a long time coming, and I'm not sure what matchup I'm supposed to need it in. If I have 4 meat hooks, or sometimes even 3, I can usually stabilize just fine against the white decks and wait for the meat hook to be good. I usually don't need to meat hook on, you know, turn 5 or turn 6 or whatever, and you know, Blood on the Snow would probably get taxed in those matchups anyway. So I also just get more land equity without snow lands. There's no Faceless Havens. So now I can run Cave. I can run Hive. I can run the new lands, that channel. I can run some Amiria's Call, some Agadeem's Awakenings, because I've got a nice little curve of creatures. It's like I can just get so much more out of my mana base without snow.
Yeah. No, I totally hear you that. You know, my intuition was that the tokens version was better, and so I feel a little vindicated in looking at these numbers. And something that interests me is that I've noticed a lot of these lists aren't actually running that many new cards. It actually seems like the Restoration of Iganjo seems to be the big pickup for this deck. And then, you know, some of them are running the Wanderer as well, right?
Yeah. I want to talk
any other.
Yeah, I want to talk about Restoration of Iganjo. That's a card that I was really into in the set review and started playing as a 4 of in several decks from day one. And really on day one was absolutely loving it. Over the last week, my personal opinion of the card continues, like it gets a little bit lower every day. And I'm not saying the card is bad. The card is value in a place where we have so much. So it's like we're making the spot for it. Is it better than a Planeswalker? Do we cut a Planeswalker for it? Do we cut Fellstinger, which straight up draws 2 cards in a lot of matchups and creates a body in place of it? And you know, I just don't think it's a 4 of. I've noticed that a lot of games that I lose I'm looking at like 2 of this in my hand, and it just doesn't do anything for a couple turns while I get hit in the face. You know?
Yeah.
And so for me, that card is in especially in Orzhov, I think it's like a 1 or a 2 of, if any, and you probably just want to focus on the planeswalkers because planeswalkers are they seem really good right now to me. People don't have enough ways to remove planeswalkers, and the Wanderer is kind of the same. Like 1 or 2 Wanderers is most of what the new cards in the deck are. 1 or 2 Bank Busters, same thing. It's like all these cards could be 1-ofs and 2-ofs. They don't have to be 4s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I would definitely play, in my opinion, I definitely play 4 Wedding Announcements before any of those other cards. Like, to me, that seems like really the core engine of the deck.
Yeah, I was just building, like, theory crafting a version in my head that was 4 Shambling Ghast, 4 Deadly Dispute, 4 Rite of Oblivion, 4 Wedding Announcement, everything else a 1-of, except for maybe Meat Hook Massacre.
Right.
Maybe I do 3 Meat Hooks, right? But
yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, totally. I mean, so it's a powerful shell, and I mean, I'm glad it's getting its fun in the sun now that Alrund's Epiphany isn't a thing in the format. That was obviously kind of holding these decks down. What's your sense about, here's the thing I'm really curious about. How do these decks play against Holebreaker Horror?
I think that you can create a really wide battlefield, and if the Holebreaker Horror doesn't have a sweeper and then play their horror, they have trouble. So like it's a weird dance where you need to keep your battlefield wide enough that if they play a Holebreaker Horror, they're just going to die. But if they sweep it, you have to be able to reload. So you have to be getting a lot of value. And it sounds like Magical Christmas Land when you describe it that way, except these decks can do it. They can totally do it. You just need to stick like a Planeswalker for a turn or 2 and really make that happen. If you do that, like those kind of strategies are completely playable. If we check the win rates in the matchups on Untapped for Orzhov tokens, though, it's like the win rates are really, 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 really positive all over the board until Jeskai Hinata, which isn't a Holebreaker Horror deck, but it's playing a lot of the cards that the Izzet Holebreaker Horror decks do. And then you got a 42% win rate against Jeskai Hinata. Against Izzet Dragons, they have a 49% win rate, which is close to even, which is good, but those decks aren't necessarily Holebreaker Horror decks either. So with I mean, one of the good news is there is no mega Holebreaker Horror deck in the meta right now, but I think that might just be people get sick of that card. I'm a blue mage. I'm supposed to love Holebreaker Horror. I don't play it anymore. I don't play it in Commander at my local game store. I don't put it in a lot of my decks just because, I don't know, I get tired of bouncing stuff around, but there's not a great other finisher in a lot of other spots. So I think it will make a comeback when people are done with the new cards. Right.
Speaking of blue finishes, how's Leah been doing? I haven't really seen much Leah around.
She did.
Yeah.
Sorry, he did.
But I think it's funny, right? Because like there was a nerf in Alchemy, so I would expect to see a lot less Leah in Alchemy, but I wasn't sure about Standard.
Divide by Zero was a very big part of the game plan.
It was a big part of it.
And Fading Hope has become unplayable. Like that card was amazing when you could combine it with Lear and use it on pretty much all kinds of things that would matter. And now I think it's partly the token meta and the Planeswalker meta, and rather than mono green being like a big deck, now mono green isn't much of a deck. Fading Hope is not good right now, and it blows my mind, Arjuna. Okay, guys, if you're out there and you still have 4 Fading Hopes in your deck, really figure out why. Like, are you sure? Are you really sure? Because I keep running into like Blue-White Control, Esper Control, Dimir Control. They've got 4 Fading Hopes in their deck, and I'm just like, cool. Like, games are going long now. I'll just pick my card up and play it again and wait for you. Next thing you know, they have like 2 cards in their hand. I have 7. They can't go get Teachings of Archaics anymore because Divide by Zero's banned. So they don't catch back up. And I'm just like, you're going to die. You're absolutely going to die.
Yeah, and exactly. And like, when you're playing a game and you're on the play and you go like blue source go and you're leaving up your Fading Hope, and then your opponent goes like turn 1 Shambling Ghast or turn 1 Eye Twitch, and you're just like, well, I may as well just shred this card up out of my hand and move along. So yeah, it's pretty embarrassing for sure. Honestly, I had been moving away from that card even before the like before the new set came out, because the meta was just shifting, and I think people were just coming back around to realizing like this is just an unsummon basically, and like there's kind of a ceiling on how good unsummons can be.
It's blown my mind, to be honest, how many people have like I was getting like tagged on Twitter with people saying, isn't Fading Hope just like ban worthy? It's an automatic 4 of in every blue deck. And I'm like, this is a product of the meta. Like the Izzet decks are playing Fading Hope because when they get to 8 or 9 mana, they win.
Yeah,
that's it. Like
that's it.
If the game goes 10 turns, if they don't have a ceiling on the game like All Run's Epiphany provides, or Leer Divide by 0 also provided that as well, where it's like, okay, when you get to a position where you play Leer and you have these open and you untap, you're not going to lose. Like without those things in the format, you're just buying time to your own demise, losing a card every time. So I just can't get over that people don't understand what makes a card good. Yeah. It's amazing.
I totally agree. I know. I mean, I would always go on these tirades about like people would send, I've said this on the podcast before, but people would send me these like Simic ramp lists that had 4 Fading Hopes in them. And I was like, guys, we need to bring it back to the basics, like we can't be losing card advantage playing cards like this, especially since we're tapping out like every turn. We're trying to like curve 2 mana ramp thing into a 4 mana chariot into a, Ren and 7. Like we just don't have time to be playing this kind of stuff. And we definitely don't have the card advantage to catch up. So yeah, I definitely think that like it's a good learning moment. And I especially think just in general, crafties, like, yes, Fading Hope has had its fun in the sun. It's definitely one of the better unsummons that's been printed in recent years. It's definitely been a very pivotal card, but let's just remember it is an unsummon, and like there are very specific meta games in which you see unsummons played. And that Izzet deck was the perfect storm, right?
Yeah.
Especially with just like expressive iteration, just casually being able to like just fix all of your card advantage issues somehow. And then, having the unexpected windfall as well, just cards like that, or even Goldspan Dragon, like it combos pretty well with Goldspan Dragon, right? So these are all reasons why you might want to play a card like that. But yeah, just like in your average blue deck, I'm with you, man. You gotta be moving away from that.
Agreed.
So let's talk about one of the decks, which is like the biggest breakout decks in this format, and a deck which is definitely propped up by the new cards. And that is the most popular deck, or one of the most popular decks on the ladder at the moment, CGB, which is...
Are you talking about Selesnya Enchantments? Because it's not one of, it is the most popular deck by, if you're looking at best of one.
According to Untapped.
Yeah, according to Untapped, if you're looking at popularity in best of one from Platinum to Mythic, number one at 22% of meta. By far the most. The next highest is Mono White at 14. 22% of meta, Selesnya Enchantments, green-white enchantments, Arjuna. And if you're wondering, the win rate, 55.4%, a very acceptable win rate for a new deck, for sure. That might be getting its wings under it, still working some things out. So, have you played this deck?
I've not played with it. I've definitely played against it plenty. It has basically done exactly what it says it's going to do. And my experience with this deck is I've usually figured out by turn like 4 or 5 whether I'm going to win or they're going to win. And that's often how it goes for me. I do think it's a strong deck, and I think it can have some incredibly explosive curves. And they usually involve that 1 mana spirit, the Pelt Collector, into the Jukai Naturalist. But, I've seen plenty of different builds. I've also seen people dipping into Naya to play Showdown of the Skulls.
Yeah, I've seen a little of this, yeah.
Seen a little bit of that, yep. I mean, clearly it's not showing up on this list, so it's not something that, like, most people are doing.
Are you talking about the rune list or not?
There is that list.
Yeah, the Naya rune list has Showdown as well, and that list is pretty wacky.
That is a wacky list, yeah. I actually haven't lost to that list, I don't think. But it can do powerful things for sure. But I don't know, like the Selesnya Enchantments list. So here's the thing. this is never really the kind of thing that I myself enjoy doing. And so it's mostly me just being like, oh, look at that. That's cute. And then trying to decide like how worried I need to be about it and how likely I am to lose to it.
Okay.
But I mean, I think it's potent, and it never ceases to amaze me how popular Selesnya decks are, just on the best of one ladder. And I'm not trying to throw shade on players, but I feel like Selesnya decks, I feel like Selesnya is like the go-to for new players. I don't know what it is, man, but like, it's like people were just like looking at the list and they were like, wait, we don't just have to play life gain anymore. We can also play this enchantments list.
That also gains
like,
life.
Yeah. And like, we can just do it that way instead. So like now that's what we're going to do. And that's what we're all about. And that's what we're going to be doing until the end of time or until some other silly Selesnya list comes along that does better. So that's kind of my read on it. Like, and I mean, granted, this list is performing better than a lot of like meme life gain lists have in the past, but it's so hard for me to not just file it into that category in my mind, you know?
So you're hitting really close to home. My wife just got into Magic, and her commander is a green-white cat. Kahira, the companion, is her commander. And yeah, nice. Like she loves her green-white deck. You know, she wouldn't change a thing. I've played a lot with this enchantments deck and the various cards in it. I definitely identified it as a potentially powerful deck. I have some really strong opinions, and they are controversial.
Okay. Well, I'm happy to hear that. Let's go ahead and hear them.
My list, if you look on the, if you click through on like the Selesnya enchantments archetype and you scroll down, I'm not the top 2. I'm the 3rd. And then, so the 3rd is my list. It has 1 of the Weaver of Harmony, which a lot of people think is a 4 of, and that I'll get into that. It has 1 Commune with Spirits. It has 1 Legion Angel. So
yeah, I'm looking at it here.
All right. I do not play the 1/1 that you were talking about. In fact, I found that the worst thing that could happen is draw a card that's not an enchantment. So other than like,
fair enough.
Yeah. Other than I think I have like 23 land. Yeah, I have 23 land, and everything else is an enchantment except for Legion Angel, which creates 4 bodies, you know, in best of 1 to use with your enchantments, and like a couple other cards, the Catildas, the Dawnheart. Yeah,
I noticed you're running 4 Catilda, which seems like a lot to me.
I'm going in on that card, but that also is kind of an enchantment because you cast the backside.
It's true.
But yeah, I'm not running Generous Visitor. I just found you draw like 2 of those in a row. Or you draw it, like you get into the mid game and you're like top deck Generous Visitor, land Generous Visitor, and you're just done. You lost the game. Congrats. Your Hallowed Haunting sits there looking at you like, why are you bad at deck building? So we don't play that.
You know, surprise, surprise, CGB picks like the go longest version of the deck.
No. Wrong. Okay, look at this deck. This is the most beat down version of the deck. It is.
How do you figure?
Because it actually makes the Michiko's Reign of Truth into a full on just 10U. Just
that's true.
Done.
I mean,
yeah. And
this card, by the way, let's just talk about this. This card is the truth in these lists. Like, this card is terrifying. This is like, you're getting more for 2 mana than I can possibly imagine.
Oh yeah,
like, it's a really, really good card.
It's kind of game over if you can just land this on a lifelinker, which is why I have 4 copies of Catilda and why I think that Jukai Naturalist is the best 2-drop, not close. Like I wouldn't trade that with any other 2-drop in the deck.
Yeah.
And it's why it's so much of a focus of what I'm doing. And I just want to get like an evasive body, and I want to hit you twice with this thing. Or if you're not going to put stuff on the ground, or if you're going to play an aggro deck that is trying to smork me, I'm just going to hit the lifelinker with Michiko's Reign of Truth once or twice and just finish you. No, I am not trying to go long. And that is my main problem with the Weaver of Harmony. I have played, and you've probably seen this too, so many times I've played against Weaver of Harmony, which looks like a really nice 1 in a green 2/2 that, you know, makes other things bigger. And then, oh my gosh, you can copy the trigger of your enchantment, Arjuna. If you tap this and a mana, your circle of confinement can hit 2 things. Arjuna, can you believe it? But you're not beating down if you're doing that. You're dirtling. You're like controlling the board, and you can build this as a control deck, but other decks will outgrind you because you don't have that many ways to draw cards. This isn't an Enchantress deck. You're not going to draw a million cards playing this deck. So it's like, I'm like, no, I do not want to play Weaver of Harmony and then tap my 2-drop to copy other enchantment abilities. I don't know how many times I've played against the version that runs 4 of this, and they play a couple of creatures and I kill them. And they play Michiko's Reign of Truth on like a creature. They hit me once. I untap, sweep the board. Their Reign of Truth goes off, hits nothing. They deploy a creature. I kill it. The next turn, they flip Michiko's Reign of Truth. I chump it with Lulth. Like, everything's fine. I have no issues. And it's because they're sitting there kind of dirtling their Weaver of Harmony and copying like a couple of triggers to get a little bit of, value. And it's, no, kill them. Get them. Smash. This deck needs to smash. It needs to drop a big Catilda. When they kill it, you bring it back from the grave on another creature. Oh, here's the other thing. Your enchantments can't all die to a sweeper, because if all your enchantments are creatures and they die, your Reign of Truth is weak. Your Catilda is tiny. It's really not good. So you got to have, like, that's why I have Ranger class. I have Ranger class instead of Weaver of Harmony because it puts a creature on the board, which I can hit with Reign of Truth, which I can pump with the Ranger class's ability, which I can do all this stuff with to keep pressure on my opponent. And when they kill it, I still have an enchantment. My enchantments didn't all go to the graveyard to the Wrath. So my Catilda is still more powerful when I cast it, stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm picking up what you're putting down. It seems quite powerful. Like, what's your assessment in just how actually good this deck is?
It has some matchups that it shouldn't lose. There are a number of. Have you tried playing a mono? Like, mono red is trying to make a comeback. There's a version that actually did really well in the challenge, and if you try it against Celestia Enchantments, it's embarrassing.
Oh, it's a joke.
It's hilarious. But I mean, most of the draws I get against any of the monocolored aggro decks, green, white, if you have a good Celestia Enchantments draw, they're just out of the game on like turn 4. It can explode. If you play Weaver and they don't kill it, which, mono white and mono green aren't great at doing, you can untap and cast like 3 spells, cast 3 enchantments, one of them being Reign of Truth, and you just attacked with like a 7/7 lifelinker. And it's insane. So those matchups, it can dominate with decent draws.
So let's actually talk about that, because one of the things that I've felt coming into this format, and I don't know if it's just like new deck bias or new shiny or whatever, but like, I would really not be choosing any of the monocolored aggro decks if I was trying to come into this format. And it kind of surprises me that like the win rate is still the highest according to untap.gg with mono white aggro, right? And I wonder if that's just because it's easy to pilot. People already know how to pilot it. It's feasting on all of these unoptimized decks or whatever. But like, I don't know. I've just not, like, when I'm building decks and when I'm playing out the decks that I'm building, I treat like mono white or mono green in this format like it's just like a spider that's like in my face that needs to get swatted out of the way. Like, I'm just not worried about these decks whatsoever. Like, how's your experience been?
I've been crushing them pretty hard with the enchantment piles, with the artifact piles, with the chariot piles, like the black-white tokens piles. Yeah, I don't seem to be having a ton of trouble with them unless they are just on the play with an insane draw. So I'm with you. I can't imagine wanting to stick to one of the monocolored aggro decks right now, because it feels like, especially the artifact and enchantment synergy decks, when they do their thing undeterred, just really go over the top. Have you seen like the artifact decks that play the Patchwork Automaton? Is that it? Patchwork Automation?
No, what is that card?
It's artifact 2 mana for a 1/1 with ward 2.
Oh, the ward one?
Yeah.
Dude, I've been playing that card in limited. That card is terrifying.
Yeah. So like, I've been seeing these decks with a bunch of artifacts that run that card, and like it's just like a 6/6 7/7 by turn 4. It's like the white deck can't kill it. They don't have the mana. They can't target the darn thing. The green decks have nothing bigger. It's kind of funny to watch them just sit over there like, huh? You mean I can't attack?
It's impressive, like how Wood 2 just changes the game, right? It's just like, because like that's the thing I love about that card is like you slam it on turn 2, and especially on the play, like your opponent's like the soonest they can even think about hitting that thing is on turn 3, right?
Yeah.
And so I mean, it can get totally out of hand, and you're totally right. Like against any of these decks that want to come out swinging, it's going to be a massive roadblock. So I mean, I don't know. Do you have a sense about like whether those decks are any good or not?
It's early. Hard to tell if they can be Izzet to save their life. But I know that they're scary. When I'm up against it, those decks scare me pretty bad. So we'll see. Yeah. I've only played a little bit with that card, but I've got a lot of bizarre wins with the various artifact modified kind of Boros white red shells, and they do pop off really good. I've been doing some fun stuff with like Angel Fire Ignition and Lizard Blades.
Oh yeah, I saw you doing like Embercleave at home.
Yeah,
right?
Just straight up Embercleave at home. But I mean, that's a very like basic, and I should probably just cut things like Angel Fire and focus in on more artifacts for Automaton. That's what it is, Patchwork Automaton. And so yeah, there's more to explore there.
Yeah, I'm looking at some of these mono white lists, and it seems like the only differences, the only substitutions people are making from the new set are like some people are trying out the Wandering Emperor, some people are maybe running like a copy of the Iganjo land, right? But apart from that, it seems like basically the same deck that it always was.
The set did a good job giving most of the established decks no new toys. Like, I mean, like mono white and mono green really don't have a lot of things that change what they do. Invoke the Ancients is getting play, which is kind of cool. But for the most part, those decks didn't get much. And is it just straight? Is it? I would say got nothing. But, if you're willing to branch to Jeskai, you get a pretty powerful rare. But
yeah, totally. No, I agree. Like, I like all these new directions people are going in. So speaking of artifacts, what's your sense of the kind of like Azorius artifact piles that Croquis was playing, right? Like how have those been doing? I
feel like that deck is really good. And there's so many decisions that I know I haven't played it optimally. So it seems like a deck you could really sink into and master. But at the same time, the deck's getting no adoption. I mean, that was like the day one deck, and it's just not even on the radar. Like you can scroll through the meta and nobody's playing it. It doesn't appear to be putting up an above average win rate on ladder. And I can tell, like, for me, like, okay, I'm looking at it here, 47% win rate.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. I went 11-1 playing it. My only loss was definitely to my own mistakes. I made mistakes in almost every game. Is this like a deck that would be very well represented in a pro meta game that just people are not willing to invest the time and brain power into on the ladder? Because I get it. I'm almost intimidated to queue it up because it makes my head hurt.
Yeah, no, you're right. Every turn is kind of like you have to strategize, look at your mana, plan out your next turn. Yeah, it is a really skill intensive deck for sure.
There's so many little things you can screw up with Tezzeret specifically. Like getting that, if you actually want to optimize and get that 2 mana discount on your next activated ability, because if you tap your Treasure Vault, you activated the ability of an artifact, and now you don't get it. If you tapped your Celestis, same thing. It's kind of a painful Moonsnare prototype. Same thing. If you use that to cast your Tezzeret, you already activated an artifact this turn, so you don't get the ability. It's a very strange thing to deal with.
Yep. No, I agree. It's a weird card and it's a weird deck, and I love it. I mean, I kind of hope that it does end up being a decent deck in the format, or some permutation of it is cool, because it is such a weird, it's like it's like a planeswalker control artifact deck, which we just like haven't really seen that much of. So in theory, it's very cool. I've definitely beaten the deck. I've definitely lost to the deck. It felt, I don't know if this is the case. Maybe this was just more of like the pilot skill coming in, but it felt kind of draw dependent to me. Maybe like higher variance than some of the other decks, but you are highlighting that it is very difficult to pilot. So maybe that's really what it came down to.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't feel like I have draws where I do nothing and die. I have draws where I have a million things to do, and at the end I can't remember what I did.
Yeah.
Teferi specifically, when you have a land that is an artifact, creatures on the board, a vehicle, a creature that can crew vehicles, and all these untapped lands, it's like I can spend my whole turn trying to figure out what 3 targets to pick for my Teferi. It's painful.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean. It's like you start roping down and you're like, I just got to do something, right? I just got to start clicking buttons and making this turn happen, right? So I'm totally with you there. Well, I'd like to see that deck start to do more and get better represented, because there's a really sweet deck and it does seem very powerful.
Agreed.
Another deck which I've been messing around with, which seems like it has the potential to be very powerful, is these anvil lists. So have you played with or against, I'm forgetting the name of this card, something anvil?
Something anvil is the technical name of the card for today. Is it Oni? Something Oni?
Oni, yeah.
Oni called anvil.
Oni called anvil. That's the card. All right. Good job, CGB. So I've had a lot of fun building around this card. It has been very swingy for me. Like I have some games where I just demolish my opponent and it's not close. I also have games where like I just felt like I was never in it. All my draws are terrible. What has your experience been like with the Oni called anvil deck?
I've only played it a little bit. Like I've theory crafted lists and then play queued them a bit to try them out. And I don't know if I have residual like pain from Cat Oven, but I just don't have a lot of patience for this kind of thing. It doesn't look bad. I've been watching Ash. I've been watching Ash Lizzle play it a lot. She loves it. It's right up her alley, and she finds ways to get lethals with these cards. And I look at these cards and I feel like I'm just getting stomped on when I play them. And it's I don't know. I'm willing to chalk it up to not being my style, but I haven't found a version that I'm comfortable with, that I feel like I'm getting wins with. And I know that people love it when I play decks like this on stream or in video, because I literally look like a floundering moron the entire time.
I mean, you're right. Cat Oven's a great comparison because the cards individually look like such low power level cards. And I mean, props to Wizards. Like you can build an entire deck around the anvil and have like only commons and uncommons in the deck, right? Apart from your lands. And so I think that it's a really cool budget deck. And I wonder if it will end up being like Cat Oven, where people will futz around with it for a couple of weeks or a month. And all of a sudden they'll be like, oh, this is what we were supposed to be doing all along. And this is really good. And then in the next couple of set releases, we get a couple more cards that make it really good. And all of a sudden, it's just like that annoying sack deck that's, in every tournament on the ladder all the time, right? So, yeah. I mean, there's nothing that immediately seems as powerful as the Cat Oven. I think that they kind of anticipated and headed that off by making the anvil only trigger on your turn, which I think was a very smart thing to do, because if you could trigger it on your opponent's turn and get free 1/1s, then it would basically just be like Cat Oven all over again. And that would be terrifying. So, but I have, like I said, I've definitely lost to it. I think if you're playing a go long game plan that doesn't involve gaining a lot of life, then you should be quite scared of this deck, because they're just going to keep chipping away at you and keep chipping away at you and, getting a lot of value from their artifacts and stuff. I'm going to keep my eye on it. I think that it could end up in a good spot eventually.
Yeah, right now the deck has like a sub 50% win rate, like 47.8% win rate, according to untapped.gg. And there's not much of a consensus build. If you look at the builds that are like over 100 matches played, It's really bad. It's like 39.7% win rate. So there's definitely no consensus build that's putting up good results. So still a lot to be explored there. See if we can find something playable.
Totally. You know, honestly, one of my biggest issues with the deck was the mana base. So it's like a 2-color deck that wants to play a lot of 1-drops and that also wants to play a lot of multicolored spells. And I had these really awkward draws where like I just couldn't play my Epicure on turn 1, or, you know, if you want to play any creature lands, that kind of makes things worse. And I don't know, it just started to get like, I just had a bunch of really awkward hands. It also doesn't mulligan very well because it's just all 1 and 2 drops. And if you lose too much card advantage, you just can't really make it up again. So I ended up having some issues with the deck that weren't even really related to the power level of the cards. I just like found it to be somewhat of an awkward deck to play consistently. But it could just be that I'm building it wrong and playing too many 1-drops or whatever. I don't know. Like you, I'm not an aficionado of these decks, and I would love to, like, you know, maybe we should like invite Ash Lizzle on the show sometime to go down the Rakdos hole, you know, because she is a very, very talented player, especially when it comes to decks like that. Okay, cool. I mean, we covered a lot of what's happening in the meta game. I don't know, like, I'm curious if there's anything else that's on your mind or any kind of big pointers that we missed.
There is a Naya Humans list on here. I just want to see if it has any new cards really quick, but I don't think so. Yeah, it's actually putting up pretty absurd win rates. Like there's a 60% win rate version that has no new cards.
Dude, who would have thought? Okay, who would have thought that Helana and Elena would end up being just like one of the most devastating cards to enter standard? Like this card has just been ramping up and ramping up and ramping up and getting better and being put in more winning lists. So like clearly it's a terrifying card.
I think if we rewind the tape on the review, I was like, isn't this really good?
Did we even read this card? I don't remember even reading it.
I remember it. Maybe I read it on a stream. It's possible it was on a stream. I mean, like haste is a lot. Size, like when size matters, like it matters. And this card, nothing like ramps up a deck like this. And when I started playing it in conjunction with like Reckless Stormseeker and Luminarch Aspirant, which then add power to Helana and Elena, who then in return add that power to something else. It's not bad. It's definitely strong.
Definitely. Yeah. So it's also interesting because I'm seeing like, you know, I'm looking at a deck here, which is playing Sigarda, Champion of Light, right? So like, I don't know. It's like these cards, which I wrote off for sure, which are like starting to get a little bit more play in the meta game.
It's not your fault, man. It's a 4/4 for 4 at Mythic. You're never going to give it a chance.
I'm not, dude. I mean, come on. 90% of the time I'm right. I mean, the odds are in my favor. So, but yeah, I'm even loving like these decks are running a copy of Minsk, Beloved Ranger, which is actually a really sweet card if your deck can cast it consistently. So, I mean, cool to see this deck performing. I haven't played against it at all. That's probably a reflection of where I am on the ladder.
Well, it's a sneaky mono white deck. Because if you just look at it, like every card except for Helana and Elena is white in some respect. And what it does is it goes bigger than the other mono white deck. So and it gets to run Thalia because it's almost all creatures. There's like 2 Valorous stance. So if you're in a face off of mono white versus mono white, but you have Helana and Elena and you have Sigarda, like your creatures are going to be bigger, stronger than opponents. So it's bigger, stronger, chonky mono white by splashing 2 other colors.
It's kind of funny though, because like when I'm looking at this deck list, I'm like, is it so far off from Bard class? Like maybe I'm just, I mean,
what are you? Okay, it's all white cards.
No, I know what you're saying, but I'm just like, look, like we add in some Magdas, right? We add in some more red cards. We put in some Bard classes, and all of a sudden we're just like popping off in a different direction, right?
We were talking about, is it humans? No, we weren't. That's funny. We were talking about Naya Humans. Bard class is its own archetype, and if we scroll all the way down the list,
all the way
hold on,
down.
let me just search for
that's
tags or cards. Bard class, no data. Zero data.
All I'm saying is like this looks like the beginning of a very juicy Bard class list to me.
I look forward to the report on your Bard class list next week.
Maybe I'm just memeing. Could be just memeing. It also maybe somewhat gives you a window into how much I respect this list, which is probably a lot less than I should.
60% win rate. You want to battle?
It appears to be the winningest list on here. But interestingly enough, like definitely the most winning list, but not the most played list for sure.
I don't think I've seen this on ladder at all. It's according to this, exactly. It's 6% of meta from platinum to mythic. I haven't seen it at all.
Okay, so that's good to know. It's not just me hanging out in gold or whatever. Like, yeah, because I just have literally never played against this deck in my life. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know. One of the things I like about the meta is that after a week, like there are some archetypes that are solidifying, but it by no means feels solved to me. And I'm really happy about that. And another thing that I like is, and this might change, but I'm seeing very few cards that feel just like completely outlandishly more powerful than the rest of the cards, right? So like there are no Goldspan dragons in this set. There are no, I mean, like Hinata might be the closest thing we have to like a truly busted card. It's also a 3-color card, so you have to work for it.
Yep. And it's interesting to see if more cards will be printed that work with Hinata, or if Magma Opus is going to rotate and Hinata is just going to be a very boring card.
Going to be a face-hugging horse. Yeah, we'll see. One last thing I wanted to ask before we go out here is, have you seen vehicles doing anything?
Oh, yeah. I played against a blue-white vehicle deck today.
Okay.
Just a million vehicles and pilots and... I mean, it's there. I haven't seen anything to be impressed by. It's not an exciting archetype to me. According to this, it's like under 1% of meta Azorius vehicles. It's like way the heck down here. And
how about have you seen anyone memeing with the Mind Link mech combo with the giant? Do you know what I'm talking about? Calamity Bearer that doubles the damage the giants do.
Yeah, so Mindling Mech, crewed by Calamity Bearer, becomes a Calamity Bearer, so it doubles and then doubles again the damage, so it swings for 16. I've thought about building that deck. I've played against it a couple of times. Nobody has successfully 16'd me. I've always been able to break that up pretty effectively. And other than that, I haven't seen Mindlink Mech played anywhere.
Okay, yeah, neither have I. Yeah, so it's always funny, like with a new set rotation, you'll see people trying to make deck lists with cards that we had collectively already decided were bad. And by and large, crafties, those cards are still bad. Calamity Bearer, believe me, I liked Calamity Bearer. I wanted that card to be good. It's not a good Magic card. Same with Master of Winds. I never liked that card. I never thought it was good. And I played with it today, and shocker, it's still a terrible Magic card. So I would just caution you about, like, you know, some of these combos look cute, but let's make a big distinction. There's a big distinction between the Rat Pilot, the Orzhov Rat Pilot. What's that card's name? Greasefang, all right? There's a big difference between combining Greasefang and Parhelion and like just winning on the spot versus combining Mindlink Mech and Calamity Bearer and like maybe doing your opponent 16 damage and then who knows what happens after that. So I would caution people, I would caution you crafties to think about the difference between those two scenarios and think about why one of them seems like pretty powerful and the other one is like kind of a meme.
So yeah, have you been grease fanging some Parhelions? Have you been holding back on me on this show?
I've not been playing Historic. It seems like a viable thing you can do in Historic.
Oh my!
I've watched. I've watched some people play it, and yeah, it's a pretty terrifying combo. I don't know if it's like actually good, but it seems a lot better.
Any like future of standard type predictions? Since we spent most of the show on that, where do you think the meta is going from here?
It's a good question. I imagine that these Hinata decks are going to be tier 1. My estimation about the enchantments deck is that it will be strong on the ladder, but not strong in tournaments. I feel like the meta is moving towards being like Jeskai Hinata, Orzhov in some configuration, and then maybe like one other thing.
Yeah.
That hasn't been solidified yet.
Okay.
So that's kind of what I'm seeing. How about you?
I mean, I hope that people like really work on like the Azorius Artifacts deck and determine whether or not it is like a play skill thing or a meta positioning thing, or actually play the tough matchups, because it's kind of it's crazy how good the day one results were for everybody to be like, and we're not going to play it. Did they find something out, or did they just get sick of it? Like, that's what I want to know.
Yeah. I also wonder if it was people just being like Tezzeret and Teferi, those are kind of memey mythic planeswalkers that I don't feel like crafting, and like I feel everything about this deck design just makes me feel uncomfortable and I don't want to deal with it. So it could have just been like just it feels weird and people
feels weird, dude. It feels weird, man.
It feels weird, man. Exactly.
I do think the Selesnya deck in some configurations is the real deal. It has a really good matchup with Izzet and Jeskai. They just can't really keep up with what it does. It runs a million of a permanent type that they don't interact with at all. And so I think that Selesnya Enchantments actually has a great matchup there, and maybe they can do something about post board. Obviously at this early stage, like that's a new player. So Hinata and Goldspan Dragon and Holebreaker Horror haven't like focused their energies on beating enchantments. If they do, maybe they'll do better. But right now, I don't think that's going to be easy for them. So, but the Selesnya Enchantments seems to have a bad matchup with the Orzhov deck. So it slots right in as that third thing. And I found that it does very often just destroy mono white and mono green. So I feel like it could slot right into that triome of the meta, but will people beat Selesnya Enchantments when they want to? There aren't any like tranquility, good old tranquility, just destroy all enchantments in play cards. Not really. Farewell is extremely expensive. So we'll see.
Yeah. I mean, it could be like, just as you outlined, like the Selesnya could end up being that third pillar of the meta game. You know what? It's probably just like, it's probably recency bias of like, I can't really remember a deck like that being a solid pillar of the meta game ever. I'm sure it has happened at some point in the past, but I think I'm just like biased away from it for that reason.
Tomorrow's going to be fun. Croaky's got 1,024 people to sign up for his standard tournament. And I will be casting like the second half of it when I wake up.
Sweet.
It's going to be fun. And we'll see what see what takes down a 1,000 person, $5,000 prize pool tournament with the new standard.
Yeah. That sounds super exciting. So by the time this is released, Crafties, we will have the results of that tournament. And I'm sure we'll be talking about them next week. And in the meantime, you can probably go and look those up on, is it on MTG Melee or is he on that other platform?
It's on Melee.
Okay, cool. So go take a look. That'll be really, really interesting. And I'm going to be playing like IRL Magic all day tomorrow. So probably going to miss it, but have a good time, CGB. I know you'll kick ass.
Thank you. I'll do my best.
All right. And with that, that's going to do it for the show. Thanks so much for joining us again. It's been an absolute pleasure bringing you this metagame overview, and I'm sure we're going to be having a similar but more focused and nuanced conversation next week as things start to solidify in the metagame. So if you want to hear us do that, you can go to Spotify. You can go most of the places you can download podcasts. We're there. You can watch the video version of this on CGB's YouTube channel. You can watch CovertGoBlue streaming quite regularly these days on his Twitch channel. You can watch me streaming usually on the weekends. I'm having a lot of fun, so I am streaming So you can catch me doing that as well. I broke 100 viewers today, dude. That was sweet.
Nice work. Hell yeah.
Yes. It was awesome. It was a good time. And so I just wanted to shout out the crafties. You're wonderful. I love it when you stop by the streams. It's just such a good time. You can go and hang out with other crafties in our Discord. I don't bring it up that often, but it is a poppin' place. I mean, we're pushing like 1,000 people in there by now. And there's a lot of deck lists being posted and all kinds of stuff. So it's a great place to go. And finally, I wanted to shout out our patrons. Thank you so much for supporting the show. You make things possible. You're wonderful. We love you. Please keep being patrons, and I will try to keep finding ways to reward you for doing that.
Yeah, patrons, you're cool.
You really are. You're the coolest of the cool. All right. That's Arjuna out, and over to you, CGB.
Later, crafties.